Hello, everyone. You're listening to Digital Builder, a podcast brought to you by Autodesk, made for construction professionals who want to hear from those on the forefront of construction technology. If you're looking for conversations centered around where the industry is going, this podcast is for you. Each episode will feature a conversation with a construction industry leader. Together, we'll dig in on themes related to connected construction and discuss where the future of the construction industry is headed. Now let's get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 12 of Digital Builder. I'm your host, Eric Thomas. Today, we'll be discussing all things related to job site safety, safety technology, creating a safety culture, and what the future may bring to construction safety. Long story short, we're going to be saying the word safety many times today. It also just happens to be Safety Week, so we pulled in leaders from two of our partner organizations to share their insights on building an impactful safety culture with an emphasis on technology. This week, I'm joined by Stan Singh, Director of Product Management at Raken, and Lee Evans, Co-founder and Chief Growth Officer at myComply. Thanks for joining me on the show today. I'd love to learn more about how each of you ended up working on safety technology specifically and what your paths through the construction industry looked like. Lee, how about you go first?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me, Eric. This is a super great opportunity for us and really excited to be here. So my name is Lee Evans, one of the co-founders of myComply. You take the title Chief Growth Officer. Now, my background, I grew up in a construction family. So my father and aunt were both career home builders. Two of my brothers were carpenters. One's a civil engineer. So a lot of our family dinners around Easter talk about building and construction and real estate. And I actually took a path into banking, but ended up as a technology advisor for tech companies and met the co-founders of myComply. They started talking about sort of the digitization of construction and how the revolution is starting to happen. And I joined up with those guys and very excited to be a part of digitizing construction and the different processes in it.
Nice. Well, thank you for sharing that. And it's not an uncommon thread that I've heard as I've started this show to hear, a very nonlinear path into construction. Oftentimes there's like a family background and then there's this like 90-degree turn where suddenly we're all fully immersed in contact. Stan, how about you? Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Eric, for having me. So I actually have a construction background, graduated with a mechanical engineering degree from UCSD. And while I was at UCSD, I was actually running a painting business to pay for college. So I did that for a couple of years. And that's what really got me into construction management. So when I graduated, I had the opportunity to go work for maybe a mechanical firm or go work for a construction firm. And I happened to choose construction to work for Turner. And lucky enough, I was back on my campus building dormitories right next to my dorm for a couple of years and was with Turner for about 6 years, then kind of worked with Kitchell doing multifamily, and then had a chance to kind of transition from construction to construction tech, working for Bluebeam. Kind of helped open up their San Diego office and had a sales kind of CS role in the construction tech space for a couple of years. And then I was kind of approached by our then founder, Kyle, at Raken to kind of help lead the product team. So that was about almost 6 years ago. And we were a small team of maybe 5 people, probably the size of my office right now at my house. And now we've grown into about 100 plus folks focusing on the field, foreman superintendents, their workflows, and helping capture those workflows and provide data and insights back to the office. So always tried to leave construction, but construction's always had this common thread since college for me. So, went from construction tech sales, and now product management for construction tech. So I definitely enjoy the space and have been very grateful to be working for Raken.
Well, that's excellent. And I think between the three of us, we've got a very widely diverse entry point into the industry. So it's going to be fun to, unpack some safety-focused conversation and all of those things. And so for the first segment of the show, we're going to be discussing Safety Week, how the pandemic impacted safety in construction, and give some advice for creating a safety culture at your organization. We'll follow this with a discussion specifically on safety technology and what the future might bring. And I think it's clear that Safety Week looks a lot different than it has in the past due to the hybrid working environment most of the construction industry has implemented in response to the pandemic. And with that in mind, I'd like to start by hearing more about what you both are seeing as the current normal regarding safety standards on most projects. Leah, how about you kick this one off?
Sure. So I'd say, pre-pandemic, job site safety protocol and having a safety program in place, is industry norm. I think what you saw with the pandemic is a new layer of safety management, a new layer of, hey, we know we've got new checks and balances for our job site. We've got to do health screening. We've got to track who's on the site when. We've got to make sure everything's clean, social distancing. So there's new safety requirements that are added to your safety program. I think one of the biggest challenges that we've seen, contractors face is being able to communicate that information adequately to all the companies that are working on a project. And that's really, I think, where technology is going to be a huge resource for these contractors in adapting how they communicate safety information to the folks on their job sites, both related to COVID, but also just everything else that they need to know about, for safety on the job site.
So for most of our listeners, like the pivot to COVID safety had to happen so quickly too. And I'm just so impressed at how adapted to problem solving the construction industry is in general, because there were so many unknowns when this conversation started a little bit more than a year ago, about, how we could actually go back to work and ensure that our teams are safe. And obviously safety is paramount, throughout our industry, above all else. Stan, do you have any insight that you could share as far as that new normal that we're experiencing tied to COVID?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I remember that like it was yesterday because we were in touch with our customer advisory board and they were kind of giving us updates on how they're managing safety on the job site. And it was so new and information was coming in almost every hour in terms of policies and changes. And really it boiled down to establishing trust with your trade partners and your workers. You got to imagine these guys are coming in working and then they have to go back home and make sure that they're protected, their families are protected. So having those active communications with your workers, your partners, your trade partners was key because you want to make sure that the job site itself is secure and you're doing everything possible to ensure that it's safe. So what we saw a lot of our contractors and our clients do is, have cleaners come on sites, have, shifts, different shifts, so there aren't as many workers on site. Things where, you would typically like installing a window or installing drywall where you need multiple people to carry those things. Now you have to think about that differently. You have to wear face masks and gloves and all those things. So all those things kind of became on the forefront because all the things that we took for granted now are like, well, can we do that? How do we do that safely? And all the things that you normally would do that, you don't even think about, now you have to kind of think about it and, fill out JHAs and AHAs and things of that nature. So those active conversations with the workers was key because you want to make sure that they come back to the site, they feel protected, they feel secure because they have to earn a living, they have to come back home, make sure their family is safe. And also, you have to make sure that the job continues to move forward and the schedules are met. So those are some of the things that I noticed. Some of the key things that kind of came up a lot was things that maybe you and I take for granted, just like porta potties, like cleaning of porta potties. I remember working at Turner, we'd maybe clean the porta potties, a couple of times a week. Now it was like 3 times a day with COVID. You want to make sure that's safe. And then the conversation kind of became into, well, why are we even using porta potties? Why don't we have permanent toilets? In this day and age, we should have permanent toilets for the job site. We have it for the trailer, for the GCs, and sometimes the subs, but for the workers, they're still leveraging porta potties. So all those common things that people took for granted started coming up in the forefront. And I'm hoping in the post-COVID world, those things kind of follow through, and we have better safety and more just humane kind of practices, so that we have safer job sites and our workers are protected.
I think you're on point there too. Like the intentionality has changed a lot, and we had to, obviously, because there was a new thing to respond to from a safety perspective that most people hadn't really considered. And I'm hopeful that, like you said, some of those lessons learned can make it into just default safety strategy. And so for our listeners who are still considering how to roll out an effective safety week plan, even if they're unable to gather for the traditional safety-focused events, how can they ensure that the week is still impactful, even if not everybody is sitting down for a barbecue at the end of the day and necessarily seeing safety demonstrations?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I remember at Turner, we would have full stand downs and essentially a half day dedicated towards safety during the course of the week, and have the barbecues, as you mentioned, for workers and their appreciation. Obviously, those things are not possible, but a lot of companies are leveraging Zoom. obviously, to be able to remotely connect with the job site using, apps like 360 cameras to kind of show documentation and progress and of that nature. And one of the things that COVID has kind of brought to the forefront is safety. We always say safety is everyone's responsibility, but in actuality, what ends up happening is it's usually the superintendent and the safety manager that's kind of doing all the documentation when it comes to safety. Now with COVID, everyone's thinking about safety. Like, how do I actively have a safe job site? So you're having these conversations on a daily basis. And that's what I liked a lot, is because you now can't just take it for granted. Safety is not a reactionary thing. It's something that's proactive, and you have to take measures. So having those active conversations, a lot of companies leveraging different shifts, and instead of having a full stand down where everybody gathers, they're essentially saying, okay, I got my supers. My supers are going to do small stand downs with their crews, and distill the message throughout the crews, throughout the different shifts, and ensure those best practices are being met. You're seeing digitization happen a lot. Things like pen and paper, we used to take for granted for everything. Now they're like, well, can I share a pen? Can I share my paper? Can I send that to you? So everything is now digital. So everyone's leveraging tools to digitize their workflows, do their toolbox talks, their JHAs, their checklists, and their forms. And you don't have to pass paper around that's being touched by people. Now it's all stored on the cloud. So that adoption increased dramatically. So that was one of the key things that I saw. And the biggest thing is obviously the active conversations. Every day you're ensuring that the workers are safe. You're having conversations about how we can build our project safely. And that's the key thing that I've noticed, and a big change, because now it's proactive. Now it's top of mind. Now it's everybody's responsibility, and not just the superintendent and the safety manager.
Yeah, I think I love that point, Stan, of safety isn't just the safety manager's responsibility anymore on a job site. I think when you look at what COVID did in terms of bringing personal safety to the focal point, is everyone hyper focused on I got to keep myself safe on the job site. I got to keep other people safe on the job site, and that theme needs to remain. Like, that theme needs to be. You can't go back to, all right, this is the safety manager's job. Everybody needs to be bought into the safety program on the project. Everybody needs to understand what they need to do to keep themselves and others safe on a project site, and everybody needs to have basic understanding of what safety requirements a job site has, and should be able to validate that they've received that information. And again, building upon what Stan said about Zoom, is you can get a free Zoom account where you can have a 40-minute conversation with up to 100 people, and you can do this for free. There's no cost restrictions to have digital communication with your team and have real engaging conversations with folks that they may be able to do in a more convenient way now, as a result of, hey, I can do this while driving home or on the subway to work. So yeah, lots of different stuff that we saw throughout COVID that kind of made us rethink how safety should be managed on projects. And the question of who should be involved isn't a question anymore. It's everyone.
And I think even stepping outside of safety for a minute, the digital transformation acceleration for the construction industry over the course of the last year is going to impact our industry in a really positive way, simply because it's going to reduce waste. We're going to have more documentation, less rework, less building off of outdated plans. So, like, for me, I guess that's one of my silver linings. But I'd like to hear if either of you are seeing any new safety processes or tech strategies or any other silver linings, resulting from this last year that we really should make sure we're implementing after the pandemic.
I'd kick this one off. So, when it comes to data capture, I think that's probably one of the biggest leaps forward that the industry has made throughout the pandemic. Is we started with health surveys and check-ins, checkouts to do contact tracing, but then you realize the data of when workers are on our site, when they left, and making sure that they're healthy while on the job site, like, that should be captured always. It should have been captured pre-pandemic. It should continue to be captured. Outside of that, as Dan mentioned earlier, cameras, 360 reality capture, wearables, IoT devices. There's a lot of variety of solutions that can be implemented on projects to allow you to capture really valuable data. Also, I think one of the things we've noticed over the last few years is the continued emergence of the CIO position within different companies and organizations, and kind of seeing now smaller and smaller companies still investing in that role. Super key. I think having somebody within your organization that's prioritized tech evaluation and procurement is going to be a huge theme coming out of the pandemic, and I don't see it stopping.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, I would say QR codes. Everyone knows what QR codes, and it's primarily because the mainstream kind of commercial audience for restaurants and everyone's just using QR codes. So now that adoption of QR codes on the job sites for construction workflows, whether it be COVID check-ins or filling out forms, and the biggest thing that QR codes have done is allow for the worker to participate in technology. Right now, we have to collect information from the worker. He's engaging with that QR code workflow, whether it's a form, whether it's a COVID check-in, whether it's an observation report. So those things have become very interesting, and the amount of friction has been reduced tremendously for them to be able to engage in those workflows. So as software providers, we have to kind of look at that and say, wow, we're seeing this shift happen. We're seeing workers start leveraging technology in a very simple, easy to use manner. And QR codes was, one of the things that allowed for that. But now, where can we take this, right? We want to make sure. The other thing that I've also noticed is, and I was thinking about this like last night when I was prepping for this, was just the displacement of workers from other industries, right? The hotels, the restaurants, and whatnot. So, and we in the construction industry have this huge labor shortage. And it'd be interesting to see if we see more workers come into the trades. And one of the things that's going to entice them is technology, right? They don't want to come into an industry that's backwards and laggard, right? They want to come into an industry that's forward thinking. And COVID, has kind of put that on the forefront and kind of put gasoline to that fire, just because now we can leverage technology. Now we have to think about it in those things, and hopefully we'll entice some of these workers that have been displaced, and they can take roles in construction, and hopefully we can reduce this labor shortage. So that's one of the things that I'm kind of looking forward to. The other thing is just mental well-being, right? That's kind of become the forefront because you're targeting the workers, and they're coming to the job site, but then they have to go back to their homes. So having those conversations, making sure that they're actively engaged, that they're healthy mentally, because you're not seeing anybody. You come to the job site, you're covered up, you can't see people, you do your work, you go back, and then you're in there quarantine at home. So the only kind of escape you have is to come to the job site. So being able to engage and making sure that you're having those conversations with your workers so that they're mentally engaged and they're feeling good, because that mental toll has been pretty high, not just for the workers, but across the world for everybody. So that's another thing that we want to make sure is on the forefront. And then one of the things that came up in our customer advisory board was, we talked about this, was do we see companies leveraging modular construction, prefab more and more, just because the environment is controlled. You're not at a physical job site, you're at a factory or an industry site, and you can take all the preventative measures, make sure everyone's safe, socially distanced. So those are things that I see being leveraged more and more, because the schedule and the demands of the owner are still the same. Obviously COVID hit, they're like, okay, well, everything's going to take longer. No, I still want everything for the same amount of money, for the same amount of schedule that I previously allotted for. So how do we do that? So a lot of companies are leveraging prefab, modular construction. Owners are being more and more aware about those things because they realize the cost of construction on job sites. So I think those things will kind of come to the forefront. You'll see more and more projects leveraging those things. So that's going to be exciting to see, how this shift kind of transitions, and hopefully we're not as laggard as we were as an industry. We're kind of, jump, hop, skip a couple years quickly into the future.
Stan, I feel like you've been sitting in on a bunch of my internal meetings recently, because you're talking about a bunch of stuff that I've been talking about lately. And, you raised so many good points there. You both do. I think in the last year in particular, employers are playing a very different role in employee wellness than they ever have previously. Like that mental health conversation has changed so dramatically. And it's not that, resources weren't in place or anything, but when the entire populace of the world is, existing at maximum stress for months and months and months, the conversation changes. But I'm appreciative of it. And that's one thing that I do hope continues on for all industries, not just construction. And the tech part of what you were sharing also kind of resonated with me in engaging engaging people with technology to, one, address the labor shortage, and then two, to hopefully reduce some of the tensions that have traditionally existed between the job site and the home office, for lack of better terms. Like one of the last GCs that I worked for, there were 450 or so people on staff, and I think only 200 had an email address, because a large percentage of them were, were labor focused. And if you're not engaging people in that technology way, it's a very different conversation. So I'm pleased to hear that that's hopefully changed a little bit over the course of the last year, and hopefully accelerates that adoption of technology for more people on the project, because that's the way we catch the young people to join this industry. And most of them don't realize that there's so much cool tech to play with every day if you're on site. So I'm going to continue shouting it from the mountaintops, and hopefully we'll address that labor shortage as best we can. But as the world, starts to reopen and the vaccine distribution scales, and I know that's different in some countries compared to the United States right now, but I'd like to hear what you think the construction industry should be doing today to stay on track from a safety perspective. Like I'm fearful that some people might let their guard down or, jump right back into pre-COVID territory, and I'm not sure that that's the right path, but I'd love your insights on it.
I would say embrace the changes that we've experienced, through COVID, and not go back and not revert back to what it was like before. So the key thing, very simple things that you have to do, having those active conversations that you're having with your workers and staff every day, making sure you're still leveraging digital tools to document what's happening, doing trainings and via toolbox talks and COVID check-ins and JHAs and things of that nature. And then just like basic human needs, like, hey, I was talking to one of my clients, and he was just bringing up this idea of porta potties, and I remember being at Turner and we had porta potties, but I never liked to use a porta potty. We always had a permanent toilet in the trailer, right? And
I don't think anybody wants to use a porta potty.
So and I remember one of my executives, every time she would say, hey, if we have a new job, we need to have a permanent toilet for the staff. I'm like, well, why is that just for the staff? We should have it for all the workers, right? We want those clean
Absolutely.
toilets that are cleaned every day. So just those basic needs, having permanent sewer connected, that's easy to do. If you already have it for the trailer, you can do it for the rest of the staff, right? So those small things make a big difference in ensuring you have trust with your workers, making a clean job site. I remember, every month we would do all the GC staff, all the PEs, the safety managers, even the executives, we'll do cleanup with all the workers, right? And instead of just doing a monthly thing, we can do that as a weekly thing, right? Making sure the job site's clean, and those simple things go a long way in ensuring trust and making sure that people feel valued and that they're feel safe. And obviously with the vaccine, it'll be interesting to see how things change. But I'm looking forward to the construction making progress in this department and not reverting back to what it was before.
Exactly. I think if anything, we can hope for the industry to build upon what has happened already, and the new processes that have been implemented to keep workers safe. As you screen them for their health as they enter a job site, and wanting to ensure that when folks are on a job site, perhaps then you'll want to go further and build upon it and say, hey, let's make sure that everyone's qualified to perform their work properly, and that goes beyond and just continues to build upon, hey, we got to be tracking that when people are on site from a health and safety perspective. So I think that the stuff that the different innovative solutions that have been brought to market should and will stay. We may not see healthcare professionals with heat guns on job sites forever, but when it comes to ensuring everybody on the job site's healthy and is qualified, and when they're there, and when they've left, so you can keep those accurate records. Companies were see the value in that outside of the pandemic and have implemented it into the regular processes. So I think that anyone who's trying to revert back is going to be left behind anyways in the industry. So it's really just a matter of how can we take what we've added to our safety processes because of COVID, and strip out the stuff that might be very COVID specific, but leave everything else there that has just improved safety for your projects and your job sites.
And I think all that ties directly back into what Stan was saying, just about, trust. Like when you establish that trust and you've built up these processes, I think it would be disruptive to pull a large portion of them out. Like you said, the very COVID specific ones, obviously, like those likely won't linger forever, but there's so many lessons learned and improvements that we've made that it would be, I think, uncomfortable for a lot of people to revert back to them for, arbitrary reasons. So I think this is a great moment to pivot to the second segment of today's show, which is tied to building a culture of safety at your organization. I've also got some questions to throw at you guys about what the future looks like regarding job site safety, specifically tied to safety technology. And so I am excited to dive in on that safety tech specifically, but before we do that, let's start with some basics. So can you share your thoughts on where our listeners should start as they look to create a robust safety culture at the organization? And then we can get to the tech part a little bit later.
Yeah, Eric, the key word here is just start. Take initiative, be proactive and not reactive. Oftentimes, a lot of smaller companies are like, well, I'm not as big as her. I can't afford a safety manager. I can't afford all these practices and these tools. And what you end up doing is becoming reactive to safety. So you only react to safety when something bad happens. And oftentimes that's too late, right? So taking steps now, start small, start just with documentation, whether it's a observation report as you're walking the site, inspections, toolbox talks, trainings, all those things are available to you. And a lot of these things are free that you can easily access from the web on your phone and engage with it. The other key thing that I would recommend is make it easier for the guys in the field to capture data. You got to imagine these guys are working. They're responsible for building. They're responsible for making sure the schedule's on track. So you want to make sure that they have an easy way to capture the data. So as they're walking the site, provide them, tools necessary to be able to capture that data, whether it's a photo capture, whether it's documentation, with multitude of apps out there, so that they don't have to go back to the trailer or go back to their car and spend 2 hours documenting what happened. So make it easy for those guys to capture as they're doing their normal course of walks and observations, and obviously ensure that the data that they captured is easily transferred back to the office. So, whether it's a toolbox talk training, whether it's a checklist or a JHA, that information can be easily accessed by the safety manager so that they can see compliance and kind of leverage that to get insights into how the job site is doing. So those are the key things that I would recommend, we do. And just be proactive. Start now, start small, and you'll slowly kind of build out that culture. Culture doesn't happen on one day. It takes time, but you have to put in the time to make sure that you have that strong safety culture in your company.
Absolutely. I think the word in the question of creating a robust safety culture, it starts with creating a safety culture. And again, it really builds upon what Stan's saying in terms of being proactive, making it a priority within the organization. Cost shouldn't be an inhibitor in this when you look at the free tools that exist. And if it just comes down to, again, coming back to Zoom or Microsoft Teams, if people are already paying for Microsoft 365 or Office, you've got sort of Teams, I think, built into that. So if you could have your senior folks that are within your organization that have the best experience, just get on a Zoom call and go over best practices with your team. And this may be something that a lot of the listeners are already doing. I think that goes a long way. You're establishing trust with your team members. You're engaging them in the process. You're having conversations with them where they can ask questions and feel part of the process. I think the last thing you want to do is just send a safety policy to your employees and have no conversation around it. So if you can start with the basics, create a policy that your company wants to run off of, communicate it in ways where the rest of the team members can engage. That's the starting point, and that doesn't even really take you into all the different types of safety solutions that can really take you from a basic safety program to the robust one that we're discussing. But it definitely starts with being proactive, and you don't want to be focusing on safety after you've had an accident or an incident. That's not good for anyone. So absolutely starts with just starting.
I like that. And I know it's easy to get stuck in that decision paralysis kind of environment or moment where there's so many decisions you can make, and it's easy to go, oh, look at all this technology I can consume to, go make that happen. But You're both absolutely right. Like, you've got to start with those basics. You've got to build your plan. You've got to make sure your culture is intentional. And that's when you have the opportunity to start layering everything else on to really bring yourself up to that top tier thing. And we know the resourcing changes from organization to organization, of course, but there's always still something that you can do. And, considering this now, how do we ensure that this approach to safety culture spans the entire job site and the project team? And what I mean there is making sure that safety culture isn't siloed from stakeholder to stakeholder on a project. So like maybe the GC's safety culture is robust and maybe one of the trades partners isn't necessarily, or vice versa. Like, how do you make sure that it's not different from team to team and everybody's just, being as safe as possible?
So, I think the construction industry is, one of the most unique industries when it comes to multi-employer workplaces. There's so few job sites that are just one employer, where safety can be managed by just one company. And, I think when you look at where the construction industry needs to go in terms of safety, collaborative solutions have to be considered, have to be a part of your evaluation. We can't be looking for solutions that silo information, because you're rarely, if ever, working by yourself in your work. So, solutions that are purpose-built, that are collaborative, that are easy to use, those and that are affordable given, the size of companies. Those are typically the decision-making criteria that we see, And I think if you're starting with the mindset of we should be picking solutions that other contractors can also use, that's going to help, long-term in your decision-making. You've made the right choice. You can collaborate with other companies. It's not one system that can't talk to another. So I think those are the kind of the keys that I would consider. Purpose-built solutions that are very easy to use, not a lot of training required. You can pick them up and know how to do things, and they're affordable given the size of the contractor.
Yeah. And to add to that, collaboration, as you mentioned, Lee, is key. And, we're seeing kind of this shift where, previously where, safety and even just like the idea of a construction tech stack was very company centric. Like, hey, what's best for my company is going to be best for my project, and what's best for my project is going to be best for my workers and my people. And now we're kind of like reverting that and shifting it on its axis and saying, hey, what's best for my people is going to be best for my project, and what's best for my project is going to be best for my company. So when it comes to this kind of setup, having that project centricity, that worker centricity is important, because if you think about it, you're on a job site, you're a GC, and you've got a bunch of trade contractors. Let's say someone falls off a ladder, right? Now, that person that fall off the ladder, their company is going to be impacted, but also the project's going to be impacted. The GC is going to be impacted. The owner is going to be impacted. Their EMR rate's going to go up. Their insurance is going to go up. There's going to be publicity, bad publicity. So, you may have the best safety culture, but if that's not being shared throughout the project and your partners, then it's not fruitful. Right, so you have to think about it in a project centricity way, in a worker centricity way. So making sure that's collaboration between the GC, the subs, the workers. There's engagement and participation in those safety workflows, whether it be toolbox stocks, checklist, observation reports, and really putting the forefront that, hey, safety is everyone's responsibility, not just the GC or just the sub. It's all the people that are kind of coming together to build this project. And that goes to the owner, the architect. Everyone involved has to ensure that safety is priority. So that collaboration is key. Having that project centricity, the worker centricity is even key to make sure that we move forward in the right direction.
I really like that emphasis on collaboration too. And you both hit the nail on the head here as far as like construction being such a unique working environment. Like, what other industry can you think of where there might be 15 different companies all actively working, in some relative state of harmony for a common goal? It's inherently complex and complicated. So finding ways to, facilitate that collaboration to, share information and best practices, whether it's safety or otherwise, is so important. This is where I start getting excited about, alternate delivery methods like integrated project delivery and things along those lines, where you're really incentivizing everybody on the project team to, be more transparent with all of their data versus, well, are we going to get litigious? Do I need to keep this a secret? Like, that's not helpful for anybody, despite the fact that our contract vehicles sometimes are set up in a way to, keep things a little closer to our chest. So we're all super familiar, of course, with the ever increasing amount of tools available to support the construction industry. Can you guys share some advice on where an organization should start their evaluation process regarding technology specifically focused on improving job site safety?
I can take that one to start off. I talked about the idea of having a construction tech stack. Me coming from the industry, I've seen the days where you would leverage one tool for everything, right? And that can be very challenging, just because if you think about it from a product standpoint, you have different personas that engage in a construction site. You've got your supers, you've got your payroll admins, you've got your PMs, your PEs, your owners, your architects. And leveraging just one tool for everybody, it just doesn't make sense. They all have different needs. So having this idea of a construction tech stack is important. Ensuring, hey, who are the people that are going to be capturing the most information when it comes to safety? It's still going to fall on the supers and the safety managers. Hopefully, it's going to be, pushed out throughout everybody. So this idea of who are we targeting? Who are we trying to help make it easier for? And that really comes down to the field. So making sure it's easy for these guys to capture the information, and really thinking about it in kind of 3 or 4 ways. One is the capture of workflows. So that capture could be your toolbox talks, your checklist, your forms, your incidents, your observation reports. The other thing is the integration of that information. So coming from the field back to the office leveraging their PM tools or accounting tools or safety tools from an insight standpoint. Then it comes into analyzing that data, right? How do we leverage big data? A lot of companies leveraging construction BI, Domo, Tableau now even, to take those big data points to make sense of what's going on, not just from a safety standpoint, but from an overall big picture of the job site. And then last but not least, just being proactive when it comes to training and certifications, right? So leveraging maybe an LMS system, if you can, to proactively train your workers, manage their certifications, whether it be, I could see it, in the near future, hey, this person's COVID, it's got the vaccine. I don't know if HIPAA will allow for that, but you'll have those types of certifications, just like you have your OSHA 10 and OSHA 30 card. It'll become commonplace. So those are things that I'd look for when evaluating technology, not just like, hey, let's get this one thing and this will do everything for us. Really start with the person that you're targeting, who's going to be capturing this information, and understand their workflows, understand what they do on a daily basis, and how we can make it easy for them to capture this information, and then kind of go down in that direction and leverage technology in an impactful way.
I like that framing on worker personas too, because as soon as you jump into a project and you start prescriptively assigning software to everybody without actually having that conversation up front, people are a lot more adverse to, picking it up, because now you've voluntold them to use it versus, bringing them along for that journey and discovering how impactful it's going to be. Lee, do you have any thoughts here as far as, jumping into the safety tech world?
Well, I even think, there is no silver bullet technology solution that's going to solve every single problem, whether it's safety or just everything in your construction project. So, I'd say that the two gentlemen on this call are in companies that are doing a great job of having solutions that cover a lot of what a construction site deals with. But there's still, there isn't that one solution. I think the term that we'll keep using on this call is tech stack when it comes to you're going to have to stack multiple solutions on one another to have your overall operation digitized. So with that comes connectivity, integrations, understanding how systems speak to one another, and just keeping a really keen eye on new stuff, new solutions that are coming to market, what plugs into what, how can I add to my tech stack and build upon it. I'd say even before that, you need to have that foundational layer before you can start stacking. And I think that both of your companies, Autodesk and Raken, are great starting points when it comes to like your first solution to get put in place. Start to have a way that you can capture your data and aggregate in one place, and get your paperwork and a lot of stuff that you want to digitize going into a central channel. I think taking this a few steps back in the conversation, a lot of companies haven't decided who in their organization is going to be responsible for procuring and evaluating technology. So it may very well start with hiring someone with a technology background or with kind of the right skill set to be evaluating these types of solutions. Perhaps even building a task force or a committee around it, given your resources and the size of your company. But I think having a central place for the evaluation and of the different solutions to come into the fold, that's a good starting point. Also would hammer this home over and over, is engage the field early and often. If the field isn't involved in this evaluation, You're going to have a lot of problems when you get to implementation and rolling it out and getting buy-in from the folks that ultimately are going to use it in the day-to-day work world on the job site. So just making sure that, you've got buy-in from the field. You've asked them, hey, we're starting to put a tech stack together. What are you guys looking at, in terms of areas that you want to improve? And we've got, these three that we're looking at. What do you think? And just make sure that conversation is engaging the folks that are going to use the system as well as the people that are going to pay for it. Oftentimes, it's only the latter.
You're absolutely right there. And I do like your point a lot about very intentionally appointing or hiring a stakeholder to be responsible for that. Even if it's not their full-time job, if you're a smaller organization that has less resources, making it clear somebody owns this and we're moving it forward is so important, because if you don't make that definition, it's very easy for everybody to just go, well, somebody's taking care of it. And then ultimately nobody's taking care of it. And then 6 months later, you've not adopted any technology and you've not moved any further down the process in your, digital transformation. So it's definitely an important one to keep in mind.
It often ends up being the VDC manager or the IT manager, and that shouldn't always be the case. Engaging your personas in the field that are actually going to use the product, they should be part of that decision-making process. So don't just pigeonhole. Okay, you're the smart guy in the room. You use VDC all the time, and BIM all the time. Why don't you go pick a tool for us? But starting having those conversations with the people that you're going to impact is the first place, and make sure you have those conversations so that they're bought in, they're engaged, and then you're making an investment that is going to be fruitful for those guys and also for the company. So
yeah, I agree completely too. Like the VDC manager and the IT manager obviously are key stakeholders in this discovery process, and they do have a very deep understanding of technology, but they're most certainly not the only ones involved. And I think one of my favorite things that we've been seeing in the last year to 2 years is just that increase in roles focused on this specifically, where somebody is brought in to manage their technology, to manage their, their data and analytics processes and everything along those lines. And it's showing a really exciting, I guess, realignment in the construction industry that has brought new focus on roles of this nature, and also ultimately and hopefully attracts a more diverse audience into construction, from the beginning, the people that do understand data science and data strategies and such. There's just so much potential in construction with the robust technology that's available that I just want to go to universities and be like, come to construction. There's so much to do. And everybody's going to be like, what? I thought that was all pouring concrete. And it's like, well, yes, but no. It's much more than that. So let's pivot here. I'd like to talk about EMR ratings for a second. That's come up a couple times during the conversation. And of course, everybody knows that EMR stands for Experience Modification Rating. And I'm kidding, of course, even though I've leveraged EMR ratings as a proposal manager in a past life and put it into a bunch of different proposals, I admittedly had forgotten what it stood for. So for those out there listening who aren't super familiar with what the heck an EMR rating is and what it means for a construction company, Lee, could you walk us through that a little bit and share your perspective?
Let me just dust off my Webster's dictionary here.
We'll jump right in.
So EMR is actually, it's experience modification rate. You got it right there, Eric. What it boils down to is a contractor's historical experience preventing accidents and injuries on their job sites and within their companies. And that's really, the resulting, what comes from those accidents and injuries is workers' compensation claims and litigation. To make it very simple, the better your historical safety performance and your ability to prevent accidents for your people, the better your EMR rating. A lower EMR rating results in lower workers' compensation premiums and lower insurance costs for your company. But it goes beyond that. I think your EMR is evaluated when you're bidding on projects, shows your competency as a partner in a trade on a project, and when you're bidding on work, it's probably one of the top things that is looked at. So, the construction industry is continuing to increase insurance in the construction industry is continuing to increase in costs. Over the last couple of years, we've seen, 2x plus in insurance increases in premium costs. So really, I think, finding ways to control that, that's, I think, when you're trying to create an ROI argument within your organization around safety technology and safety solutions, this is your number one selling point in terms of how you're going to save your company money and where money is going out the door by not having adequate safety solutions in place.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And for kind of like layman's term, it's kind of like that driving reference, right? The better the driver, the lower your insurance rate. So it's very simple when it comes to the same thing here. The stronger your safety culture, the less accidents and near misses that you have on site, the lower your bonding capacity increases, your EMR rate goes down, and you can bid on certain jobs, like certain private government jobs. You need to meet these criteria, so it opens up opportunities for you as a company. So making sure you have that safety program and culture in place is extremely important, and being preventative and not reactive is a key thing to ensure that your EMR rating is low.
So we've got a room full of tech-focused individuals here. Stan, do you have any thoughts on how a company might improve their EMR by leveraging technology specifically?
Yeah. The goal of the EMR is to make sure the workers are safe, right? If you don't have accidents on site and you have, all these workers working, and your EMR rate is going to go down. But to ensure that there are no accidents, you have to make sure you have a good safety culture in place. And I really break it down into like 4 areas. One is capture. So you want to make sure you capture what's happening on site. So, observations, incidents, inspections, toolbox talks, your JHJs, AHJs, all those things that need to be captured, you capture those digitally. Collaboration, which we talked about, not just, safety is my responsibility as a company. No, safety is everyone's responsibility on the job site. So making sure that there's collaborative workflows, that everyone's collaborating in the capture of that data. And then the ability to integrate, right? We talked about the idea of a construction tech stack, right? So the information captured from the field for all these safety processes needs to integrate back to the office, to their PM solutions, to the ERPs, to their clouds, to their BI solutions. So making sure that you can integrate is important. And the last but not least, analyze, right? You're analyzing that data, understanding, hey, are there any nuances? Are there any, correlations that we can use to better protect ourselves, better protect the job site, better protect the workers? So those are the 4 buckets that I would look at in ensuring you can lower your EMR rate: capture, collaborate, integrate, and then analyze.
I think if I was to add anything to that, I think the ones that I had mentioned, ensuring that everyone on site is qualified to perform their specific work safely and have received the necessary training to perform that work safely, and you can verify that. Beyond each individual's specific training, I think job site safety and just empowering people to have an understanding as to what they need to be aware of in terms of safety on the job site, and ensuring that information has been communicated in the preferred language that an individual speaks, I think is very important, so they can make sure they understand what you're saying, and they really buy into what they need to understand for their safety on a job site. And then just throughout the life of a project, are you able to track that the orientation that you gave someone in year 1, your year 3, and the project is in a completely different state, the weather's different, you're working in a completely different environment, maybe that orientation needs to be renewed, or maybe some OSHA training needs to be retaken. And ultimately just making sure that, people on site are trained properly, what work they're performing, and to Stan's point, capturing as much information as you can and about safety, and I think most importantly, empowering the folks that are on the job site to be able to capture that information easily, taking pictures of things that need to be communicated to the site superintendent or the supervisors of, hey, this doesn't look safe. I want to make sure that I, comment on that and get you that information. All these things are going to contribute to safer job sites, which means less incidents, less accidents, and bring that EMR rating down.
And your points here really lead into my next question, actually. And, as the amount of technology on each project increases, the volume of data across the board, especially tied to safety, has increased dramatically along with it. And so from a safety perspective, can you share with our listeners, like, what data is really valuable to be collecting and analyzing? Like, what should they focus on if they're, coming to the job site and going, okay, we need to be safer, and I want to track some very important data points to ensure that we're headed that direction?
It's almost I'm almost trying to think the opposite as to what data isn't valuable when it comes down to, what would you exclude from the data, conversation? And there's, very few that I think you would, but ultimately, the obvious ones are who's, what's going on the job site, who was sort of the who, what, where, when, why. Who was on the job site, what training qualifications did they hold, when were they there, where were they, what work were they performing, and how was it being done. And I got, largely data around those questions should capture most of what will relate to safety. But I'm sure Stan's got a few more to add.
No, I mean that's a good way to put it. Who, what, where, when, why. I mean that's exactly what should be focused on. Obviously, workflows from a safety standpoint. Capturing of photos, documentation, like user date timestamps, location data, worker activity data. So you can kind of think of, just like I use this kind of scenario in one of our demos with our clients all the time where we're like, hey, we have this ability to capture toolbox talks, and you can see who did it, when, what time, for what job. So, because what happens is sometimes you may have an issue. You did the toolbox talks, you did training on ladder safety and all those things, but then 3 months later, the worker does fall off the ladder, and there's a workman's comp, and OSHA's coming at you, the insurance is coming at you, and we're like, hey, look, we did our best to ensure worker safety. This worker was part of 3 different toolbox talks and trainings for ladder safety. We may have a bad apple here. So this is something you can protect yourself. And if you didn't have that documentation, you didn't have those user date timestamps, the location of the project information, you won't be able to protect yourself, right? So making sure you're capturing that information, making sure that those metadata, when it comes down to, is there, it's available. And as Lee mentioned, that hey, don't exclude the data. If it's there, maybe it's not noticeable, but it's there in the background. You right-click properties, you'll see all that information that you can easily use if it comes down to a court case or a dispute or a claim. So all that information is available to us, and we should be leveraging it to protect ourselves, but then also prevent, accidents from happening. So all data is important in this case.
Yeah, I think it really does come back to that intentionality about what you're capturing and how you're leveraging it. You can collect all the data in the world at the end of the day. If you're not actually doing anything with it, or making an effort to infer some insights from it, you're not going the full distance with the capabilities that you have. And I know it's overwhelming sometimes, just because there's so much nuance to it. But I think it comes back to just starting and trying to step out of that decision paralysis and leveraging all of the tools that you have available to you. So I think it's time to get our crystal balls out. And unfortunately, we're not picking lottery numbers today. And if we were, I wouldn't do it on the show. We do that in a separate conversation. But I'd like to talk about the future of safety technology and where that's headed. And I'm curious to hear if you have any insights, like where's safety going to be in construction in 5 years, 10 years? Like what's changing? And I'm also curious to hear if COVID has impacted that in any way.
Yeah, so I think what we expect to see over the next 5 to 10 years is just continued, adoption further down, into the SMBs, kind of the small to mid-sized contractors. Right now, you're seeing the largest contractors in the country are adopting solutions and implementing them, and a lot of times it's on their, larger, more high-profile projects, which makes a lot of sense. Those are the biggest projects to protect, and there's the most, personnel on those sites. I think what we'll see now is when the comfort level is found with these solutions on the major projects in the largest companies, that's really that tipping point where then the early majority and the rest of the industry starts to have trust that the solutions are adequate and are not going to overwhelm them, or they're not going to make the wrong decisions. So ultimately, I think that you're just going to see more adoption, building upon the foundations that are being laid right now. The biggest companies, leading the way with that, just given they've got larger budgets and bigger teams to take on these types of initiatives. But our hope is that the mid-sized contractors and the smallest contractors are buying in as well, and the solutions that remain in market are built for those people, so that there are collaborative solutions that remain in place, because it's, again, to say it again, it's the collaborative industry. Almost every job site's going to have multiple employers on it. So the more that we can get, the biggest companies working with the smallest companies on similar platforms, the better the industry is going to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, to look at it from a 5-year and a 10-year perspective, I'd start with the 5-year, and Lee, you hit it on the head here. Collaboration is key. Having that collaboration is important. The safety being the responsibility for the entire project job site team, and not just the GC or just my company. So how we do that within technology or non-technology is going to be important so that you have that trust established within your partners. Now, if I look like 10 plus years, I see, as Eric, you mentioned, like the different, contract delivery methods, IPD and all those things kind of come into play. Companies leveraging maybe factories. You hear about factory OS, you hear about automation, you hear about, prefab and modular and sensors and all that information being captured. So leveraging big data to be able to capture that information and ideally leveraging data to get better rates and discounts, right, from your insurance providers. I'd like to see that. I mean, if I'm a good driver, I get a better discount. If I have a strong safety culture, I should get a better discount on my insurance rate from my provider. So I would like to see that correlation happen and work with those insurance companies and partners so that we can provide those rates. And then the other thing that I see is, we hear about like, oh, the robots are taking over. They're going to take over. And what I'd like to see is, the augmentation of capture data, right? So we're capturing data, the worker's capturing data, but you can also capture data passively. You've got 360 cameras, you've got your earth cams and that are capturing data and analyzing. You got companies like SmartVid that is telling you, hey, if he's wearing a hard hat or not. So being able to passively capture data and augment that with the data captured by the field and foreman to provide a more holistic approach is going to be key. And then leveraging that to get real-time analysis so that you can take action right away, right? You're not waiting for something to happen months down the road. You're seeing it happen and you're taking action right away based on the data that's being captured. So those are the things that I'd like to see, and we're already seeing that happen in a small kind of way, and maybe it is targeted towards those bigger GCs and subs, but having that trickle down to the rest of the industry and the rest of the partners is going to be key.
I'm also pretty excited about where, robotics and AI and all these different, helpful tools that will, address even things like the labor shortages in construction. I think there's an important education conversation that needs to happen where, like, we're not eliminating jobs. We're giving you the opportunity to focus on the jobs that humans are better at doing. And if we can delegate something else to a robot to either alleviate labor shortages or keep people safer, it's kind of a no-brainer in the future state of the construction industry. I'm also hopeful for mechanical exoskeletons because I just want to get my hands on one of those. Although I don't know what the applications will necessarily be in construction.
Overhead drilling.
Yeah, things will start getting exciting in about 10 or 15 years, depending on where our hybrid tech goes. So I've got one more question for each of you before we end this episode. And our listeners know this one comes up every week for my guests, and I really enjoy asking it. So can you tell me what is one tool you will always carry in your toolbox, no matter what type of project you're working on? Stan, how about you kick this one off?
I was thinking about this. Obviously, you think about your face mask. I always sometimes forget carrying my face mask, going to the grocery store. But now, when I was at the job site, it was always PPE. My superintendent wouldn't let me leave the trailer until I had my full PPE. So every time I'd leave the trailer, I'd have my vest on and I always kind of do the pat. Like I got my gloves, got my goggles and, put them on and then go to the job site. So PPE is always top of mind for me. And that's just kind of instilled from my super back in my Turner days.
I like the pocket check. I do the same thing every time I leave the house, even if I'm not looking for PPE. Although mask now is part of that conversation. It wasn't, a year and a half
Phone,
ago.
wallet, key, and mask now. Exactly.
Phone, wallet, key, masks. Phone, wallet, key, masks. Yeah.
Although I am still mortified every time I get out of my vehicle and I haven't put my mask on. I'm like, oh my gosh, like what are people going to think of me? Like I'm embarrassed to be out in public. It's going to be strange to go into the store, in 6 or 8 or 10 months and not have our mask on and be able to smile at each other. And, the world's going to be changing soon. I'm pretty optimistic about that. So Lee, how about you? What's your tool that you would always carry in your toolbox no matter the project?
Well, it's Construction Safety Week, so I'll definitely double tap the PPE and upvote that. I mean, without question, that's going to be involved in every day. But as we continue to talk about technology solutions that will very likely run on a smartphone, a tablet, or a laptop, powering those devices in the field is always the next question. Do I have battery life? So maybe a little lame, but a portable power supply for your laptop, your tablet, or your phone to make sure that you've got battery power on the job site. Second to that, also lame, a Wi-Fi booster. If you don't have good connectivity on the job site, it's going to be tough to use any of these technology solutions. So I can't say smartphone, but I'll say the things that power the smartphone.
Those are good answers, and I carry all that stuff even when I'm not trying to do some work. The battery pack, I think I have 3 kicking around the house at this point, especially with PG&E turning our power off out here in California on the regular. And then the Wi-Fi adapter, this is kind of funny, but when I do vacation, I'll oftentimes hybrid working remotely and not. And I bought an external Wi-Fi antenna that has like a 15-foot cable. And the last time I was in Mexico, I had it tied to the top of my beach umbrella, so I had enough Wi-Fi access so I could sit down by the ocean and still work. So I don't think any of those answers are lame. And if they can facilitate getting work done and also possibly enjoying yourself, I'm all for it. So do either of you have anything you'd like to plug that our listeners should know about?
So I'll start, for listeners looking for a solution to ensure qualified workers on your job sites, and to be able to track accurate time and attendance, worker demographics, all the different information about the workforce on your projects. Would love to help you out. Give me a shout. I'm Lee at myComply, and happy to connect with you.
Yeah, I'll put a plug in for Raken for sure. We're a field management app that really has a superintendent foreman on the forefront. So we start with them, make it easy for these guys and gals in the field to capture their key workflows, whether it be daily reports, time cards, photos, material, equipment, toolbox talks, JHAs, checklists, and then essentially capture all that data and provide insights and reports back to the office. So a payroll admin who's processing the payroll can now do it much faster. A safety manager now has full insights into what's happening on their safety site. The executives know visibility into the job site. So that's kind of what our focus is. So if you guys are looking for something very simple and easy to use for your guys in the field, look at us, rakenapp.com. And if you need to hit me up, just hit me up on LinkedIn or email me at stan@rakenapp.com.
Excellent. And you both have, just such excellent solutions, which is why I'm so excited to be having this conversation here. Lee, did you have any way you wanted people to reach out to you if they wanted to contact you as well?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the Lee Evans in Saskatchewan, Canada. And but you'll find me through myComply, and you can reach me on email as well, lee@mycomply.net.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for taking the time to join us on this episode of Digital Builder. As always, if you want to reach out with any questions or would like to be a guest on an episode, you can find me on LinkedIn or via Twitter at builder_digital. You can also check out our new homepage by visiting construction.autodesk.com/podcast. On that page, you can sign up for our biweekly newsletter and even suggest show topics or future guest ideas. And of course, please like, subscribe to, or share this episode if you enjoyed it. It really does help my team when you do that, so I'd really appreciate it. And on that final note, goodbye.
You've been listening to Digital Builder. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player. If you're listening with Apple Podcasts, we'd love for you to give a quick rating of the show. Simply tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves, and then you're done. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.